Hello dear crypto friends and welcome to this video. Forgive me, I might sound a bit strange today, but I was at the dentist and the left side of my face is still numb, so I will sound certainly a bit strange, but I hope you will still be able to understand me. And today we are of course going to talk about Bitcoin, the crypto market, and what I think could happen in the next days or weeks. So let us start as always with our long-term chart. Now zooming in, let us zoom in and we go into the 4-hour chart. And what do we see, friends? We see something quite nice forming here. In my opinion, this could be an inverted head and shoulder in development. So here the left shoulder, here the head, and here the right shoulder. And if this breaks out now, typically the range, it breaks out the distance from the head to the neckline. So if this breaks out, we can expect a breakout to the $26,000 or $27,000 area. But of course we have to be careful with inverted head and shoulders, because they are only confirmed if the breakout occurs on high volume. So if the volume is somewhere down here, that wouldn't be nice. We want the volume, friends, to be somewhere up here on this level. It needs to be a nice high volume breakout to be confirmed. Now, why do I think this could indeed happen? Why am I suddenly so optimistic? Like, what is going on with me? Did the anesthetic of the dentist make me somehow weird in the head and now I'm super optimistic? Of course this could be, but the reason is actually that, friends, something very nice is happening. We are now looking at the oil chart, and what do we see, friends? We see oil is dumping like crazy. It is dumping, it is falling from a cliff now. And why is it nice? If oil falls, it has really started going down a cliff. Let's go into the weekly chart. Look at this here. It is really dropping a lot. And we have also very strong bearish divergence. We see it makes higher highs here in the price, but lower highs in the RSI. If we accept this weird outlier, this spike here, then we do see that we have really a very strong bearish divergence, and these normally end with pretty brutal dumps, because if we look at the last time this happened, for example, this was the case in 2018, right? Let's look here. Higher highs in the oil price, but lower highs in the RSI. And what happened afterwards? Bam, a huge dump happened. So I think it is quite similar this time. Brutally high bearish divergence, a long time frame bearish divergence in the weekly chart. This, friends, could end in a quite nice oil dump. But why would that be good? I mean, isn't that bad? If we look at the last times now that oil dumped, wasn't this always bad for the economy? I mean, if we now have the SP 500 in orange and we overlay the oil chart, oil went down here, for example, in the early 2000s. The S&P 500 also went down. Or oil started going down in 2008, and that is when the real big sell-off in 2008 came. And then even here in 2018, here we had a brutal sell-off, but here we also had a brutal sell-off in the S&P 500. So wouldn't this be insanely bad now? If oil starts dumping, wouldn't the S&P 500 dump even more? Yeah, friends, there's a quite big difference this time, and that is insane inflation. And how is inflation calculated? By the CPI. And what is the driver of the current high inflation according to the CPI? Yes, friends, that is right, high gasoline prices in the US. So the very high gasoline prices in the US, they lead to a very high CPI. The Fed sees the data, sees, oh, the inflation is very high. Okay, we have to continue raising interest rates. So as soon as oil will start dropping, then the CPI will also go down. Then the inflation will also go down, because, as I said, a large part of the inflation of the CPI comes from gasoline. So therefore, if oil starts dumping now, that is actually quite good, because then the inflation will go down and the CPI readings will say, look, inflation went down, therefore the Fed will not continue tightening as much anymore. The Fed will loosen their monetary policy and we might get a nice rebound in the stock market and actually get a stock market pump while there is a dump of oil. Also, we shouldn't forget that there are some things that are different now as in the last cycles. For example, in 2008 and here in the early 2000s, the US was not yet the largest producer of oil in the world. But now look here, the United States is now on the first place, even before Saudi Arabia, of oil production. And that is only the case since a few years, okay? I think since late 2018 this has happened. This was not the case before, so this was not the case here in 2008, this was not the case in 2000 and 2001, and this was not the case in 1990. In all the last oil spikes and oil dumps, this was not the case, friends, okay? So this time it actually really is different. That is the hilarious thing. This time it really is different than the previous times, and because now we are in a very high inflation environment, which was also not the case, for example, in 2007-2008, because that is the case now, a dump in oil will directly translate to a dump in the dollar index because of the aforementioned reason, because the Fed will then say, inflation is going down, we're loosening monetary policy again. That leads directly to a dump in the dollar index. The dollar index is now positively correlated to oil, also a lot because, as I said, the US is indeed the largest oil producing country in the world, and that means basically that the dollar has become pegged to oil, positively correlated. So if oil starts dumping, what does that mean for us? That's right, friends, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies will actually go up. So now that oil has started dumping and we have this super insane bearish divergence, as I said, there's a very good chance, if we go to the dollar index, that the dollar index will start dumping. And we saw that the dollar index is also printing some nice bearish divergences. They are really more visible in the daily chart. Here in the daily we can really see them strongly. Higher highs in the price, lower highs in the RSI, super strong bearish divergence. So normally if something like this occurs, that's a quite bearish sign. So I expect the dollar to roll over at some point. And of course, this will also be good for the economy, because a dumping dollar means, of course, more exports, and that is always good for the economy. So I expect in the Nasdaq or in the SP 500, at least if you say, okay, we will not have like a rally with new all-time highs now, I will expect still at least a quite nice bounce of some sort. At least that. So going back to Bitcoin now, what does that mean? Of course, this means that the probability that such an inverted head and shoulder scenario will come to fruition is actually not so low. It is actually, I would say, quite a likely thing to happen. Short term, I see some resistances, of course. There's this big falling resistance here, which could be reached, I don't know, maybe by some point in mid to end of July at around 35,000, right? That is a big resistance, but of course, before that, there will be also this resistance here. So there are a few resistances that we have to overcome in order for continued pumps in the crypto market. And we can start talking about the possibility that we get a continuation of the bull run after we have overcome these resistances here. Before that, we don't even have to think about stuff like this happening. We have to be rational, and we have to first see if we will even manage to get through these resistance lines here. But if we do manage to get through, if something like this here happens and we get through, we can start becoming more optimistic, cautiously optimistic. And of course, we will have to monitor also the other very important things like, for example, the 2-year yields, because the 2-year yields are also very strongly linked to oil, and we can see that they are also starting to dump because they too, as we said, have started making a hidden bearish divergence. Look here, higher highs in the yields, but lower highs in the RSI. Classic, absolute classic. And they probably too will also start rolling over at some point, because last time this happened, last time the yields showed a bearish divergence. Look here, this was in 2018, friends. The exact same thing happened. It ended in huge dumps for the yields, and the stock market continued pumping. So these developments are not bad, and if oil keeps dumping, government bond yields keep dropping, dollar index consequently also keeps dropping, I will get cautiously optimistic that indeed a continuation of this bull market to the upper end of this resistance channel might still be in the cards. It might still be in the cards. It's not impossible, okay? So we will monitor the situation. But of course, we should keep in mind that this is the optimistic scenario, and the pessimistic one would be represented by this long-term channel here. This is far more conservative, and this could imply that this could only be a dead cat bounce, right? We're bouncing and we revisit the same area again, and then only at some point in 2024 we will go higher when the next halving saves us from this brutal bear market. That is the current picture I have, friends. It's looking good that oil finally started dumping. I hope this continues, reduces the inflation, makes the Fed loosen the monetary policy, makes the dollar weaker, lets stocks pump, and consequently lets also Bitcoin pump. And that would be, of course, nice for the entire altcoin market, right? Because if we say, hey, the altcoin market, total 3, right, looks quite primed to pump, and also I haven't mentioned this here, the altcoin market total 3 actually almost perfectly hit the old all-time high here. Isn't that nice? That would actually be a quite good setup for a pump. That would be quite a good setup. But of course, this will depend, as I said, on oil, on the government bond yields, and on many different things. But that's why we have this channel here, to continue monitor these things on a daily basis and try to understand if such a scenario is actually likely to happen, or if such a scenario is more likely to happen. That is what we want to find out. Thanks for watching, friends. I hope you found this video interesting. If yes, please like and subscribe. I would be happy to welcome you here on this channel. Then I wish you a nice day. I hope you could hear me despite my face being numb, and I'm certainly feeling still weird from the anesthetic. And I wish you a nice day, friends, and see you in the next video update tomorrow. Bye!